Welcome, everyone. You are on another episode of Unscripted. You're live with Eric. I am going to, as if you didn't hear it enough over the weekend, we're going to talk about Will Smith and the Will Smith incident at the Oscars. And some other things that were happening that day. On the show today, I have with me Christopher Jones. We're going to kind of talk about the whole issue and with Will Smith slapping Chris Rock on stage at the Oscars. Kind of crazy, kind of crazy. Christopher, how you doing?
I'm good, Big E. How you doing today, man?
Not too bad, not too bad. Did you get to see the actual Oscars and the event happen?
No, I did not see the show. Like most of everyone else, I've seen the video of it since, but I didn't see the show. I did not see it live.
Oh, okay. Well, since you saw some of the tapes, some of the recorded, the different, angles that they were shooting this at, what were your thoughts on it? What do you think about that incident?
Well, I definitely thought the joke was in bad taste. Whether he knew that she had alopecia or not, uh, I think most men understand that you do not disrespect another man's wife, another man's woman, another man's mother. So I thought the joke was in bad taste. That being said, I understand Will Smith's motivation, his desire to want to defend Jada. I understand him wanting to take action, but I just think it was the wrong place, the wrong time, for a number of different reasons.
Hmm.
That type of violence doesn't come across very well on a TV. It just doesn't. Um, the language, I understand they have the 7 second delay and all that for just an occasion, but still the language. And to be quite frank, um, it doesn't portray African Americans in a very positive light, not at all, and I think especially as an African American man in a setting such as that, that has to be at the forefront of his mind. It If it wasn't at the forefront of my mind, it would have been at the forefront of my wife's mind.
Hmm.
But I think as an African American man, that has to be at the forefront of your mind when millions of Americans are watching on TV. Who knows who's watching it around the world? He's a 6'2" 200 something pound African American man, and he's going up and smacking another African American man live on national TV. It doesn't play well at all, not at all.
And again, we're assuming that Chris Rock knows about the alopecia, right? Because when you look at Jada, I mean, I in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, he's comparing it to Demi Moore when she had, she shaved her head for this, to be a Marine, right? She's showing an empowered
Correct.
woman being in the Marine Corps. So you don't think people were probably thinking, or maybe Chris was thinking, hey, you ready for GI Jane? Because honestly, to look at Jada Pinkett and again, not knowing what alopecia is, just say we don't understand what alopecia is. It doesn't look like it. There's no patches. There's no patch. Her, she's a beautiful woman. You're thinking, oh yeah, you see you
Mhm.
next in GI Jane. Um, so we're assuming that Chris Rock knew that and that his joke was in poor taste, or was he saying, oh, you know what, hey, maybe you should be in that next GI Jane movie, because you're like fitting the role. Because to me, I feel like she's a beautiful woman, and she looks great bald. But
Correct.
again, not saying Chris or even Will Smith's actions were right or wrong. Um, Alopecia is actually a serious issue, I guess, for some people, for women and possibly men.
Mhm.
And here to talk
Mhm.
about that is our special guest, a Washington, D.C. Licensed mental health counselor and the author of the book Copeology, if I'm saying that correctly. Please help me welcome Dr. Joanne Frederick to the show. Hi,
Hi,
Doctor.
thank you.
Good
Yeah,
afternoon,
definitely.
Doc. How you doing?
I'm assuming you saw the clips of the show as well, correct?
I did. I saw the rewind and the rewind and the rewind after the rewind. Yes.
So before we get into that, let's get into a little bit about you. Tell us our audience about Dr. Joanne Frederick.
Yeah, well, I'm a licensed professional counselor in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. I see individuals, couples, families in a one on one private setting. I also am the author of a book called Copology, and I'm an adjunct professor at George Mason University in Virginia. And that's who I am. I'm also a parent as well. I have three children.
Awesome, that's great. So okay, so having seen the show, what was kind of your take on the situation, on what transpired?
Yeah, so first the joke went over my head. I didn't hear G.I. Jane. I'm just looking and I'm like, okay, oh, what's going on? This must be acting. But then I knew it was not acting when one person sat down and said, F this twice. And I'm like, okay, like what's going on here? So my overall thought, I feel like a couple things that I saw. One is anger, rage, bullying, and also lack of emotional intelligence.
Mm,
So the anger and rage, I can see that from Will Smith's side, whatever triggered him to do that and not be emotionally intelligent in the moment, meaning if there's a problem, something that none of us even know, these people's relationship off of the
hmm
screen, like what has happened in the past, it would have probably been a better idea to approach Chris Rock after the show or some other time and have a discussion or whatever. That's the emotional unintelligence that I saw, but then also the bullying. So what Chris Rock said then and whatever he said in the past, is that a form of bullying? I
mm,
also read and realized that he was bullied a lot growing up. So I think about from his perspective, to be a black male, get slapped on national TV during a
mm,
function where everybody is dressed to the T.
mm,
What does that feel like psychologically for him? What traumas, triggers is he going through while
hmm
we're all, talking about the other side? So those are my thoughts that comes up with this.
So I think what they're talking about is they were triggered because, or Will was triggered because they're stating that Jada suffers from alopecia, and from my understanding of alopecia is, can this really be debilitating for women as well as men?
Definitely, definitely. So, and especially I'll talk about the Black community, the African
Hmm
American community. Historically, our hair, particularly women, and the adornments we wear symbolize our marital status, our wealth status, age, religion, all of that. And when we were going through the slave trade, the first thing to do is to capture African people and shave them bald, where we're
hmm
taking away their power, their beauty. And now, many, many, many years later, in the 60s, to have an afro, Black power, it's empowerment, it is activism. And then nowadays, we're looking at social media, and the media and television is telling us that if your hair is long, light, and straight, it's beauty. So, but if you have a condition like alopecia or any other that you can't have that type of hair, it does something to our self esteem, our self confidence, our relationships at home, family, our career. People, especially women, we identify ourselves with our hair. It does
hmm
relate to our identity.
And I want to take it back. I remember being young, and I'm thinking, Will and Chris probably did the same thing. I don't remember if you remember growing up, and I'll pose this to Christopher, is that we used to have all kinds of, like, we would be roasting in school. Hey, your mama jokes.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
this, you got a wooden leg with a kickstand. What do you think? Do you think they would be used to something like that? I mean, what's your take on that? But see how we're laughing about that? I mean, I'm thinking, is it because he said it about Jada and not his mother, or you hear what you get what I'm saying?
Are you
That's
asking
interesting.
me?
Oh yeah.
Chris.
So what do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think? Was that
Oh,
like? Do you think
well,
Will
I
should have been
remember,
like?
you remember you could make your mama jokes, but you could only go so far. There was only so much you could say about my mom, and then it was going
Yeah.
to be on. But I think once a man takes a spouse, uh, I think that leash is shortened. Um, I think maybe those words take on a little more meaning, a little more emphasis, and at the same time, so when the joke was initially told, Will laughed, but when he
Right.
saw Jada's reaction to it, it
Yeah.
changed his reaction to it. So I think that it impacted him in one way, but when he saw how it impacted her,
Mm.
then that changed what the joke meant to him. Had she not displayed any hurt, any disappointment, any if she had not displayed any negative emotion about the joke, I think it would have been fine. But he saw her, he could clearly see that she was hurt by the joke.
Mm.
And that changed what the joke meant to him. I think if it had just been, him amongst his boys and they were telling jokes,
Yeah.
as long as it didn't go too far, it would have been acceptable. But because she heard it and she was directly impacted immediately, then that changed the significance of it for Will. And I can
Absolutely.
relate to that. There are a lot of things that have no impact, no effect on me, but will on my wife. And I can empathize how whatever that is affecting her, even though unto itself it's not affecting me. But the impact on her does affect me. Absolutely.
Wow, that's interesting. That's an interesting take on that. And then Dr. Fredericks, just the action itself. Explain, because Will's a big guy. Do you think he was holding restraint by not punching him, or what was the purpose of open hand slapping him? What do you think that did?
Well, I
Restraint?
think one man slapping another man is the purest side of disrespect. I think it's almost like spitting in
Yeah,
someone's face. A
yes,
slap is
yes,
like you beat, that's the message. Um,
yes,
and it's
absolutely.
very disrespectful. But you just asked about him having restraint. I think he had no restraint to even get up
Mm.
of his seat and walk across. I feel like a comedian, that's what they do. They tell jokes, especially people that's on the front row.
Yeah.
And yeah, it could be a condition, but he's doing his job. I mean, he always does that. And that's what I think. There was no restraint. There's also a part of me that wonder if he disassociated for a quick second where he's
Right.
not thinking about where he is, who he's around, what he's wearing, the purpose of the occasion. You just get up because you're right next to that person. So you might as well do something, have a seat, and continue to yell. Like there were some things there that was not emotionally intelligent in that
Or
moment.
appropriate, right?
Mhm.
So basically, alopecia. Not again. I understand alopecia. Alopecia is a hair condition, a hair loss condition. What exactly is that? I hear autoimmune. You're thinking, wow, this is really a serious um, disease, if you will. Am I saying it right? Is it a disease?
Yeah, it is. It's a disorder, a dermatological disorder, and it can be caused on environmentally or hereditary. So many times alopecia runs in families. It runs in my family as well. And sometimes environment can cause that. So for some people, men and women, there's patches, of hair that's missing, or it could be a big amount or all. So some people just kind of prefer to just shave it all off so you don't see the patches, but again, it does have a psychological toll on an individual to have that autoimmune disease as well.
Well,
Sometimes it's caused by treatment, maybe like a chemotherapy or some other type of thing as well.
yeah, like you said, and age could be a factor. So is age a factor? So there's male pattern baldness. Is that the same as alopecia?
It's not because you could be 15 and have that. So not
Okay.
related at all in that way.
And our producer is James Hicks. Could you bring
Yeah.
up the picture of Jada? I mean, because honestly, the reason why I want to bring this up is because this is a beautiful Black woman, right? And for her to still feel uncomfortable, and in this one, she's talking about how she's accepted being bald. Uh, So people can have an issue with that. People still, even though as beautiful as you are, as strong as you can be, uh, words can hurt. Words can hurt. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me see here. Yeah, so words can be really, really detrimental. Let's talk about your book, Copology. I know it's not just about alopecia. What does it mean? I get it. Coping, are these coping mechanisms, exercises, or things like that?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, so as I shared earlier, as a therapist, I have a private, confidential relationship with many people. And especially during the pandemic, I wanted to be able to provide information that anybody can use. Therapy is expensive and not financially, but just the emotional toll and the time commitment it means to be in therapy. So my thought was if I could create coping skills, things that I verbally tell people and put it in a book, what would that be like for other people to use? So copology, the word itself, is something that I created and trademarked, and it means the study of coping. So the idea is if you study how to cope, regardless of what we're going through, you will be able to survive through that issue and even thrive through that issue. So Copology is an anthology. It's made up of about 8 short stories, different people. And we're all pretty much talking about how spirituality and counseling has helped us through life. So some of the titles are Surviving a Black Man's Trauma in the United States. So this particular author talked about being a Black man, what it's like, and how to survive. And one of the things he talked about was just leave us alone, leave us alone as Black men. Then we talk about the power of prayer. I talk about the power of prayer. We have survivor's guilt. In this particular story, a lot of people died and experienced a lot of losses through the pandemic, social injustices, discrimination. And in this case, when people survive those types of incidents, they result in what we call survivor's guilt. So I talk about that. We talk about that. And then I give counseling tips for anyone. So one of the first tips is something that relates to grief and loss. Another one is that men also need self-care. We talk about and dealing with anxiety and depression. And so the book is giving counseling tips, really small, quick ones, along with stories of losses, infidelity, single parenting that anybody can relate to and walk away with some skills to deal with life and life stresses.
And we're going back to like being a man and being bald. As you can see, Chris has embraced his baldness. I've known him. I've known him a while, and I've known him when he had hair and not when he had hair, and he's embraced it. How do you feel about being bald, Chris? I'm sorry.
Actually, I thought it was kind of cool. I started shaving my head when I was 24. I still had a head full of hair. I was in the military at the time. I went over to Saudi and it was extremely hot, so I just cut it all off, but I loved the way it looked. So, for me, I just thought it kind of fit me, it kind of fit my personality. But I know there are a lot of men, they're like, oh my goodness, the thought of losing their hair, it's a life crisis for them. It didn't bother me at all, at all. But I know that's probably not the norm. That's probably the exception to the rule.
Well, I'll tell you right now. The reason why I say that is because me, myself, personally, you see, I have a hat on because I'm in the midst of losing hair. And you know what? There's times that I was fine being bald, and I walked around, I was bald, and I was fine with it. And then there are times I was like, you know what, I need to wear a hat because and I started letting it grow back. And I think the trauma for me growing up. and I'll go back to when I was in North Carolina. We were playing basketball on in a park. It was a basketball park in North Carolina in Jacksonville, and I got in trouble. So what happened was I was in class, and all of us had big hair, and I had a pick in my head, and the teacher asked me to take it out, and I said, you know what? And at that time, I was like, you're white. You don't know what it means for me to have my pick. It was the old pick with the fist and the
With the
metal.
fist
So I had
on
it in my head, but they're seeing it as a
it.
weapon, right? So what happened was they told my father, and my father said my dad was a Marine, right? So what did he do? I'm gonna shave it off. So it was traumatic for me because then I had to go to I went to school, and I wore a hat when I went to school, and I took it. And then when we were playing basketball, one of the kids took it off my head because I was bullied. I'm gonna say right, I was bullied, and it was trauma free. It was traumatic for me, even though I felt like people said, "Oh, you look great bald." It wasn't the norm for me because I was so used to still having my hair. And then even I'll have like often, off days when I'm fine being bald. And then there's times like, I should wear a hat, maybe somebody's going to say something. So yes, this is weird that you get this feeling and people can make you have this feeling. Right. So, which is, again, going back to Chris, the power of words. Yeah. Do comedians, joke and roast on people? Yeah, and freedom of speech, but do we also have a responsibility? And I'll pose this to the doctor: do we have a responsibility to kind of hold back or have a responsibility of not hurting someone's feelings, no matter if we freedom of speech, right? What's your take on that?
I agree. And that's why I said that to me was also a form of bullying. If you're
Hmm.
saying what you want to say to anybody, are we not bullying? Is that not bullying? And even this is what it looks like for adults on national TV, a joke. And these days, we're really serious about bullying. And we talk a lot about children getting bullied, but adults get bullied in the workplace. Adults get bullied in the industries, as we can see. So it's not a good thing, but also we're watching this play, and then it also seems like there's no consequences for these
Right.
types of behaviors.
And then I was watching a TikTok meme, and one young lady said she was looking at both sides. When she said, "Hey, white people, stop, you know, talking about black folks that are trying to just deal with their frustration." However, and then she had a message for black folks: stop feeding into this, because you're now, if you believe this, you're feeding into the accepting of the stereotype, if you will, right? What's your take
Yeah.
on that, Christopher? Should we be? It's like, oh, you know what? Everyone's violent. It's a human behavior, not just a black behavior. You know what I'm saying? What's your take?
Man, that's a tough question. My family, we have a group text string, and so there were two camps on this situation. And the one camp said, not the place, not the time. The other camp said, he's defending his wife. Me and my wife and I, we talked about it, and she said, I absolutely would not want you to have gone on that stage. If you had gotten up, you had tried to get up, I would have stopped you, and she would have.
Mm.
Um, but she knows me, and at some time, down the road, I would have confronted Chris and given his responses. I might have given him that work, And so I was having this discussion with some friends, and I told them, my wife would not have wanted me to have confronted him then or there. But if I came home a few days later
Yeah.
and I told her, yeah, I saw Chris, and like they used to say on the Spartacus series, we had words. She would have chastised me initially, and then she would have smiled and shook her head, and she would have given me a hug and a kiss and said, "Thank you, babe." Women, and I'm not demeaning anyone, but women like to feel that their man is going to protect them. Women like to feel that their man has their back. Not all men are like that. As you know, Eric, I'm kind of a confrontational guy.
Yeah.
um, Not all men are going to respond in that manner. Some men will. I think what's most important to remember, whether it's words or acts, you are responsible for and accountable to your actions, verbal, nonverbal, verbal and nonverbal. You are responsible for and accountable to your acts on both sides of this situation, Will
Right.
Smith and Chris Rock. You never truly know how someone is going to respond. That being the case, you should always err on the side of caution. It's just a prudent thing to do. Err on the side of caution, and you won't have to worry about what someone else's response is going to be. And I think that's the best thing that can be said about it. As you said earlier, Eric, don't deliberately set out to belittle, berate, because words do matter. They carry weight.
Mm-hmm.
And as we saw, words can often lead to grave consequences. Period.
And I think you said that. I think you said that really, really great because accountability is everything, right? We all have to understand that. Yeah, yeah. Do we have freedoms that we can do? But guess what? With those freedoms come consequences. And right, if you want to say what you want to say, know that something's going to happen. I do agree that a place and time is appropriate. You have to pick appropriate times. Also, take a step back maybe and think about what you're going to do before you do it. Because again, like you said, Chris has a consequence. If he says, if he wants to say something demeaning to Will's wife, know that something's going to happen as a consequence. Like Will as well. If he's going to protect and do the defense of come to the aid of his wife, there's going to be consequences. I think as long as we know that we're going to, in my mind, I think as long as we know that we're able to accept those consequences, then I think
Mhm.
we have an understanding. And again, to me, I feel like it's just human. And I know celebrities, they have this, it's great to see celebrities and, but they're people. They're people like us. And again, here's the thing that it's not a color thing. We're all human, right? We're all human.
Exactly.
Just like a black
Exactly.
man can get angry, so can a white man. I saw a movie that when we were, it was like a not cowboy, yeah, maybe it was Cowboys in his movie. And then the white man was coming to the thing, and look at those savages, let's kill them. That's a savage thing to do, right? You're just gonna go kill some people because and you're gonna call them savages, and you want to kill them, taking their land. What is the thinking behind that, Dr. Frederick? Is that a masculinity thing? Is it a control thing? Because to say
Yeah.
it and then your actions are the savage actions, to me, make no sense.
Yeah. So what are the thinking behind like, oh, let's kill these savage? It's almost like if someone is different than you are,
Mm-hmm.
then you feel powerful. It to me is part of history, American history,
Mm-hmm.
where something is different. We want to take it, we want to rob it, we want to steal from it. And I think it relates, like you were saying, just human nature. That's the way
Mm-hmm.
some humans think and feel. I do think that it could be cultural,
Mm-hmm.
because all cultures don't feel and think that way. Some will see difference and embrace it, rejoice it, and worship
Mm-hmm.
difference. And other cultures will say, oh, different, kill it. It doesn't belong here. Take it. Let's rob it. And that's how I think that it could be culturally as well.
Yeah, I think, and again, having intelligent conversations like these, sitting down and talking about how we feel, I think is important. And you're right. There's cultures, when let's talk about culture. It doesn't even have to be and I hate to say the racial culture, but like an ethnic culture, like an Asian culture thing. We can go on like a neighborhood culture. In our neighbor, a gang
Mhm.
culture. The gang culture, it's okay. I can hurt this person because they hurt us, or that the mentality that you grow up with and then you pass on is always it is the culture that you're going to put to people to make them, which I think that kind of direct their morality, if you will. It directs their morality. So if you're doing it, and again, again, I don't want to say religion. Sometimes people use a religion or their culture or some as an agenda to kind of do things that may not be right morally, right? Killing somebody, oh, I'm doing the work of God, and by taking you out, things like that, and which is it's insane to me. It's crazy to me. But again, we're humans. I think we all have to kind of learn to live together. Hopefully, not hurt one another. But when that hurt happens, I think we need to be able to have conversations like these, and intelligent or not intelligent, but have a conversation. We don't have to always go to blows. And the reason why people, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Fredericks, the reason why children act out in physical is because they can't communicate. I think if we learn more how to communicate, I think the world would be a better place.
I agree with that. I think it's the communication and it's also the role modeling, the behaviors that they see. So, even back to this example, one of my first thought was, oh no, the children, like people watching, with sending that message that you have a conflict, you don't like what someone say, handle it right now. But also the communication, as you're saying, we have to teach kids. And many of us adults have to learn to use those feeling words. I feel frustrated because you did X, Y, and Z. But the other side too is that we have to learn to listen to each other, right? Adults,
Right.
children, and vice versa. Where if someone is speaking, what are we hearing? Many times we're trying to think of a response while somebody is speaking versus, hold on, are you saying? And then we need to repeat to make sure I heard what you said and empathize with what we are talking about.
All right. And having said that, I think I've had conversations with Christopher in that they're like conspiracy theories, right? And again, I want to say maybe might be on the true side that there are forces that don't want people to talk intelligently and communicate about these things. What do you think, Chris?
I think you're absolutely right. Divide and conquer is a real thing. Divide and
Control.
conquer is a real thing. So if someone can foster animosity between you and I, it makes it easier for them to administrate their agenda. Because you and I are so focused and so focused and distracted on what we have going on between each other, Doc just moves right in and displaces both of us. Now we've both lost, and neither one of us even knows what. Neither one of us knows that Doc, in her infinite wisdom and her years of uh, of behavioral science and all that, she's just come in, she's manipulated us, she's played both of us against each other to get what she wants, and neither one of us got what we want. Neither one of us. We're
sitting
both
there like,
sitting
what just
outside.
happened? Right, exactly. And I think it's important for like-minded people to try to stick together and say, hey, you know what, we know there's a better way. We know that hate and violence is just a form of control, right? It's just a form of control, but we can't allow it to kind of make us collide with one another, and it's easy for us to talk about this because we're all the same, we're all Black, right? But we need panels where there are more diversity and people that just want to live good lives, right? We want to watch our children grow, we want to watch their children grow without worrying about, hey, running across the street and somebody's going to get hurt. And again, it's not always a gang hurting somebody, right? It could be whatever forces out there. And again, I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. I know it's one of the, for the doctor, it's like you're on East Coast time. But any last words, Dr. Fredericks?
Yeah, just right quick, something Chris said. So I was thinking about, you were talking about like divide and conquer. So even this whole Oscar and what everybody's paying attention to and talking about, we've missed other people getting awards that was well deserved. We missed celebrating the first Black production of the Oscars, how well it went in spite of that. But we focus on that and kind of make more of a division, right? So I just kind of wanted to share that. And I also wanted to say thank you so much for having me here today. I really enjoyed this platform and this discussion.
Appreciate you joining. Christopher, what about you? You got any last words?
Yeah, ironically, This conversation has actually enlightened me to a mistake I'm currently making. For the last couple of days, I've been involved in this conversation with a former shipmate of mine, so focused on where we disagree, not haven't even thought about where we agree, you know? So yeah, definitely. You said it, Eric. We're all people, you know. I remember seeing the earthquake that caused the tsunami. I guess it was 2009, 2010 maybe. And the thing that most struck me was those people looked just like any other person you saw experience a traumatic event and enormous grief. We are all the same. Despite our differences, we are all the same. So I think we should focus more on where we agree. Focus on that first, and we can work out the disagreements after the fact.
Right.
Let's focus on where we agree and go from there. I owe someone an apology.
Well, I
Ooh.
mean,
I
like you said,
do.
at least you're having a
I do.
conversation. At least you're having a conversation, and that's
Yeah.
what's important.
Yeah.
Because as big you're a big guy, you can go to blows and you'd always win. But the conversation, it's important to have the conversations to keep the friendships, to keep the family together, just to be well rounded. So I do appreciate you both coming on. I love it. And anytime you want to come on, let me know, and we'll set that up. But I also would like to thank our guests that tuned in. And remember, on this show, we chat about life, love, family, you name it, it's unscripted. Thank you for joining.